Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering church around the world. In 1981, an 18-year-old refugee fled his homeland, Vietnam, with 150 others on a leaky boat. For over 7 days they braved the open seas. Finally, without food, without water, without fuel, they appealed to Our Lady to save them. She heard their call, and the refugees were picked up by Australians. Today, that same person is the Auxiliary Bishop of Melbourne, His Excellency Bishop Vincent Long Van Nguyen. To tell us more about his story and the situation of Catholics in Vietnam, it is my great privilege to welcome Bishop Van Nguyen to our program. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us here today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mark.
Your Excellency, Vietnam suffered 3 decades of civil war, after which in 1975 the communists took over Saigon. Can you tell us a little bit, what was this time like for you?
It was a time of intense despair and a time of intense uncertainty in relation to where the country was heading and the future of the people of the
You were living
Vietnam.
in Saigon at that time, is that
I was living near Saigon. Our village is about 70 kilometers from Saigon to the north west of Saigon. Yes.
And you lived during the war, that is, your parents would often bundle you up and run you downstairs to the bomb shelter to escape?
That was the regular occurrence in every Vietnamese family household. In our situation, we were familiar with the communist atrocities committed against the people of North Vietnam. My parents were actually refugees from the north, and so they had experienced the cruelty and the atrocity of the communist regime, and they knew what it was like living under communism. So they had a very adverse sentiments towards the Vietnamese communists.
There was, when the communists finally when Saigon fell and the communists took over Saigon, you got on a motorcycle and you took a ride around which shook you, if I understand, rather deeply. Can you tell us about this day?
Yes, actually we had escaped the advancing communist troops from our village where we lived to the Cape of Vung Tau, or it was known by the French as Cape Jacques, and that was the very end of the road, so to speak. So we ran away as far
as you could get
from the communists as we could, and it was there when the war ended with the declaration of surrender on the part of the then Vietnamese president. That I decided to take a tour of the city that fell under communists, and what I witnessed was.
What was it that
was horrifying and made a deep impression on me as to the senselessness and atrocities of the war. Things like child bodies lying everywhere, soldiers, Vietnamese, South Vietnamese army soldiers especially, who had retreated to the cove of Vung Tau as they tried to resist the advancing communist troops, and many of them died as a result of that last-minute confrontation, and the civilian casualties too were
horrific.
Just horrific. Yeah.
Your parents then decided to leave, that is, to flee Vietnam, and if I understand correctly, your brothers left before you.
Yeah.
It must have been a heartbreaking decision for them to leave their homeland.
You know, we lived under communism for 5 years after the end of the war, and we had hoped that the end of the war would bring about a new future for the country, and that didn't turn out the way that we had expected. In fact, the communist regime brought anything but stability and a bright future for the Vietnamese people. They had decided to engage in two simultaneous wars, to the Chinese to the north and Khmer Rouge to the south. So the country was in chaos.
So they saw no future for it.
As well as the tremendous persecution of anyone who was connected with the South Vietnamese government. You know, the proliferation of the Vietnamese, of the education camps, for instance, would be one indication of how vindictive the communist regime was towards the South Vietnamese people, or specifically people who had worked or who had some connection with the South Vietnamese government. And that was the catalyst for our decision to do what we did, namely to run or to leave, to flee Vietnam.
You were 18.
I was 18 at the time, yeah.
And you got on a boat with 150 others.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened? How did this come about, that you escaped to the boat and set sail?
Well, it wasn't simple fare, you know. It wasn't as if you just get on a boat and the boat disembarks and you go away. You know, it's not QE2 experience. But personally, I had two failed attempts at fleeing Vietnam.
You were caught both times, or the boat?
No. Luckily, I wasn't caught both times. We managed to escape surveillance by the police. But it's just to show that I think it was extremely difficult for us to leave Vietnam.
But the third attempt,
The third attempt, I got lucky. I was fortunate. We left from the port of Vung Tau, not the major port. It's one of those little inlets that helped us to escape detection on the part of the communist police, and we got through.
You were 150 on that boat.
Yeah.
And if I understand correctly, the majority of you were Catholics.
All of us were Catholics, in fact, on that boat.
How were the relations between people? In a situation, you were 7 days on the open seas, how were the relations between people?
Well, it got very tense. People got panicked because, when you get on the boat, you have many expectations, like food, water, and other things. But that wasn't the case. You know, when we got on the boat, we realized that the boat was overwhelmingly overcrowded, and so we couldn't throw the people away. Yes. So we ended up throwing things that were essential for our survival, like water, even fuel, food. So it's those things, or you get you sink.
Was there a prayer life on the boat? Because as you were Catholics and you had entrusted yourself to the Lord, was there a prayer life, or how was that? How was the spirituality maintained?
It was difficult. We were overwhelmed by the sense of tremendous fear and tremendous uncertainty. You know. In fact, there was a time that some of us wanted to go back. It's a bit like the story of the Israelites, walking in the desert. That people were enthusiastic at first, but when stuff comes to shove, then people, really do the calculation. Is it better to die, or is it better to go back. But we persevered. There was a sense of trust.
So you had put your faith in the Lord. You said,
yes.
whatever
yes.
God you wish.
Yeah. So we, at some point, we got down to say the rosary every evening, and people would sing hymns just to keep the spirits up. In other words, yeah.
If I understand correctly, the seventh day was on the feast day of Our Lady of the Assumption.
Yes, it was around the feast of the Assumption that things became really critical.
Because you had no fuel, no food, and no water.
And the boat was running into mechanical problems, and then so things were really grim. Critical and pretty grim. So we decided that the only way to confront this situation is to pray. And so, that's
and
what we did. And
you appealed to Our Lady. It was her feast day.
Yeah, it was her feast day. And so we all got down to our knees and prayed the rosary and sang hymns to her.
And she listened.
And it was incidentally also a day that we experienced a storm, a powerful storm, tropical storm that really scared us, and after the night, things, the sea became calm and as if there was a miracle that we survived that storm at all.
And the next day you were picked up.
Yeah, more or less the next day we were picked up by. We had encountered many passing vessels along the way, but none of them would stop and
they
help
saw
us.
you, but they kept going.
Yeah, they saw, but they kept going.
That must have been incredibly disheartening.
Yeah. So in the end, we kind of we gave up. We didn't even bother to wave at them or to give them signal that we are here, sort of thing, because we had been disappointed so many times. So, so luckily this time it was the real thing.
Yes. You landed on the shores at Springvale, Australia.
Yeah.
And you encountered there the conventual Franciscan friars.
Yes, yeah.
What was it that struck you about them? Because if I understand correctly, this was rather a critical moment when you saw this help given by the Franciscans.
Yes, I settled in Springvale, which was the predominantly migrant area, as there was a big holding center for migrants and refugees. And it was there that I met the friars who lived and worked in Springvale, and they kind of made an impression on me as to the way they lived their lives and the way they helped us refugees and migrants.
Would you say that was the beginning of a vocation for you?
Well, that wasn't exactly the beginning, My vocational journey went back to the time that I was a minor seminarian in Vietnam, before the communists take over. I spent 12 months in this minor seminary with a view to becoming a priest, even though the concept was pretty vague at the time. You were young, so you had no developed idea of a priesthood and the demands of a priest, And then when I came to the camp, I lived in the camp for a year and for 16 months, which was considerably long for a refugee to be held that long, in the camp. But that was a time that I did a lot of thinking and reflection and instrumental to my vocation, my eventual priestly vocation. The camp, there was a lot of despair on the camp too. We had no families. The living conditions were really
basic,
really atrocious, and that was a kind of situation that forced you to reflect on the meaning of life and its direction, its purpose. So I guess that was seeing the people who suffer and being part of their lives, helping to alleviate the sense of hopelessness and despair. That really helped cement my vocation too. So in the camp, I was determined that I would become a priest if ever I got to a third country.
Today you're the Auxiliary Bishop of Melbourne, Australia. How do you see the hand of God in your life? And if you were to trace your refugee experience, your living in the camps, how do you see the third chapter of your life playing out with the history that you've had?
Yeah. Well, God works in mysterious ways, and I certainly didn't plan to become a bishop. I didn't plan to become a Franciscan. I had no idea who St. Francis was. St. Francis was very little known in Vietnam. But I see, on hindsight, the hand of God leading me almost step by step to where I am today, and the critical experiences, that of leaving Vietnam by boat, that of living in the refugee camp for a year and a half, and that of encountering with the Franciscans. All these things kind of conspired, if you like, to make me who I am today. And I see the hand of God in all of that.
Your episcopal motto is Duc in Altum, a phrase, of course, from Blessed Pope John Paul II. Why did you choose this particular motto?
First of all, I chose this motto because of the sense of hope that it engenders. As Blessed Pope John Paul II used it in the context of the new millennium, So even if things appear to the contrary, the Christian faith still constitutes hope for humanity in the third millennium. So that was for me the biggest impetus to be a bishop in the third millennium, and an oasis of hope for the people living in the desert of the secularized world today. And second motive, I guess, is that I'm a refugee by a boat person, and that past, that background that constitutes who I am, and I'm a witness, a living witness to liberty, to freedom, to fundamental human values, things that we in the West take for granted, and I want to share with the world that those things are worth fighting for, and that motto says a lot about my past, who I am today, and also in a spiritual sense, it constitutes a call to face the unknown,
with faith.
Step or go further into the deep, So looking back, there has been a series of invitations to go into the deep, whether when I became a Franciscan, or when I became a priest, or when I became a bishop, each time the call was more intense, and the call was more strenuous, and yet also it promises,
of the hope that's still to come.
The hope for me and for those that I ministered.
I want to come back to this word of hope, in particular in view of the situation of Catholics in Vietnam. You left in a difficult situation, particularly for the Catholics under communism at that time. How would you describe the situation of Catholics today in Vietnam?
Well, to some extent, the church in Vietnam is undergoing a period of resurgence, of revitalization, if you like. The seminaries are full, the convents are full, the churches are full. So any external measure would tell you that the church is doing well, perhaps extremely well, in comparison to what's happening in the West.
Western societies.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then, when you look at more carefully beneath the surface, there are challenges in relation to the way that Vietnam is governed. You know, Vietnam is still governed by a communist regime, and a communist regime is essentially an atheistic regime. An atheistic regime that doesn't see eye to eye with religion, especially Catholicism. So it might give the impression that it works with the church, but when it comes to the crunch, their monopoly on the society, and indeed their monopoly on the church, is still prevalent. And that is a big challenge, as I see it, you know.
For example, the number of seminarians are regulated in the number of seminaries that can enter the seminary. So there are more vocations, for example, than can enter into the seminary because of government restrictions.
Yes, well, not just the restrictions in terms of the number of entrants to the seminary, or you know, in other ways, but even in the way that the church operates. The church does not enjoy complete freedom from the interference of the communist government. For instance, lessons in Marxism are taught in the seminary, even now.
It's obligatory.
Yeah. So the government has a condition that unless this is taught in the seminary, you won't be allowed to operate. So that's one way of interfering with the church's activities.
Because this comes out of fear. It is a fear it is atheism. We understand that the communist system is fundamentally atheistic and against God. But the interference, the question of the universality of the Catholic Church, there must be also a fear that if the church is allowed to operate freely, what happened, for example, in Russia and other former Soviet Union countries, might also happen in Vietnam. How does the church? Is there not a way that the church can say, no, we want to be actually responsible citizens. We want to have freedom of religion and freedom of freedom of religious expression, but to be the best citizens of Vietnamese society. But this is not yet understood.
The government simply does not accept the premise that there can be some other institution rather than itself to run the Vietnamese society, all aspects of Vietnamese society, with education, healthcare, or any other aspect of the society.
Civic society.
You know, so they want the monopoly on everything, you know. So that's why even now, you know, the church is forbidden to enter into these areas that it considers important for the promotion of the common good.
Vietnam, the economy is growing and growing well. Does this economic liberty or growth, if you will, reflect itself on a religious or a civic freedom, or is there still what I'm moving towards? Is there hope or is there no hope? Or are we seeing small steps in the right direction, or is the situation as firm as it was when you left?
Well, as I said, there are some aspects that would give you the impression that things are going well in Vietnam, you know. On the economic front, Vietnam is not as poor as it used to be. Even in terms of international diplomacy, Vietnam is not as isolated as it used to be. But then if you look carefully beyond the facade, things are quite different. Essentially, Vietnam is still a closed society. They only open insofar as it helps them to maintain a firm grip on the country.
As a Franciscan, conventual Franciscan, you were freer to travel in Vietnam to help. Now, as the Auxiliary Bishop of Melbourne, how will this change your situation? Will you be as free to go back to Vietnam, or How do you see now your role in helping those Catholics in Vietnam?
Well, I'm not quite sure how the government will treat me now that I am a bishop and have a higher public profile, if you like. I'll wait and see. But as far as I'm concerned, as a bishop, I also have a duty to promote issues of justice, issue of civility for my people in Vietnam. Even though the Vietnamese in diaspora are long removed from what's happening in Vietnam, they still have a stake. They still have a keen interest in what's going on in Vietnam.
What would your appeal be to those who are with us now on our program?
Well, I would ask that we continue to show solidarity and support to the people of Vietnam who have endured the yoke of a dictatorial government for far too long. And the government that is ruling Vietnam is one that, as I said before, atheistic, whose only interest is the absolute monopoly on the society, and to the detriment of its people. I appeal to whoever is watching this program to show their love and their solidarity to the Vietnamese people by way of supporting the legitimate aspirations of the Vietnamese people.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for having been with us today on our program.
Thank you very much for having given me an opportunity to appear on your program.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the situation of Catholics in Vietnam, or perhaps how you might be able to help, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.